Hold up. Tag a brother in. Now, I'm gonna let the clip play. Then I'm gonna jump into it real quick.
So I'm gonna let you stand near the Divas Championship. NXT is overrated. I could never really get into the stories. They have some great matches, but I'm not invested in it. I'm gonna have to agree. It's basically your taste preference. I don't know. It's very subjective whether you like it or not. It's not for me. I know it's good, but for me it's too murky. I don't know how to explain this, but it feels way too indie for me, and I'm not a big fan of that type of wrestling. I'm all about the stories, and while they do have great stories, I just don't feel them. I don't know how to explain this. I never really got into NXT. I tried many, many times. It just doesn't work for me. Bobby Lashley is boring.
Alright, before we get to what you said about Bobby Lashley, let's talk about NXT. One of the biggest problems NXT will always have is that you are under the WWE banner, but you're not acting like a WWE show. You're acting like a totally different brand, which is why this is the biggest mess up with NXT. And this is why a lot of people have the argument about the main roster and the NXT roster. They're not talking about an in particular show. Here's the thing. NXT has an indie feel because it's supposed to. Look at the wrestlers that's in there. Nothing but indies and maybe a few homemade. Maybe a few homemade wrestlers that never even seen another promotion. That the only way that they seen a promotion was when they were tagged on Twitter, they should join this promotion. That's the only time. Maybe. And that is a big maybe there. You have to understand. NXT walks into looking at WWE. Now let's look at Raw. That looks like something made by WWE. SmackDown looks like something made by WWE. NXT does not. The reason being is because the indie feel, the wrestling itself, you will rarely see a match. Rarely see a short match in NXT unless it's story purpose. They are story driven. Pretty much every single match is story driven for some reason, one way or another. NXT is cool for what it is. NXT, I wouldn't say overrated, but I would say this. They took themselves very seriously, very quickly. Everything with Neville, from the whole Neville thing, I was interested in that. But after a while, you could see that it was turning. You could see it as more champions and different people became champion, the more the company evolved. Well, I'm sorry, that brand evolved. It went from just NXT, the NXT champions Neville, and you get to see other wrestlers wrestle here, and maybe you get to see like John Cena, then maybe pop up and wrestle them. You went from that to we're our own brand, we're our own company, we're different from Raw and SmackDown and Superstar and 205 Live. NXT is good for what it is. NXT is good for what it is, but not under the WWE banner. It's not. If it was its own little thing away from WWE, it probably would be in the same boat as AEW. It would be a show that not that many people are in, but a lot of people are into. It's not the majority, the casual wrestling fans, because let's be real, complex stories, pretty much on a complex level a lot of times, because a lot of them are complex stories at times, and now I'm not saying every single last one of them, because you would have to take away every filler part to make the story a simple just straight Raw or SmackDown story. The story that they tell are actually somehow only sometimes is better than Raw. Better than SmackDown, it depends on who's in it, because they can put on some very good matches, and they're not really necessarily bad. They're not necessarily evil. All I am saying when it comes to NXT is that NXT walks with this swagger about itself that screams indie, and no matter what the story is, it somehow goes back to the indie scenes of it all. It feels like I've already seen this match. It feels like it's not a WWE show. It never felt like it after it started to become its own little brand. The NXT Championship wasn't like that. Neville had it. It felt like just it felt like the equivalent to, well, let's be real. It was taken seriously, but it wasn't taken too serious to the point where I would think it was just a whole different thing where it could be on the level of the Universal or the WWE Championship. But after some time, I was able to kind of look at it, and I'm still questioning: is it on that level? I don't think it's on that level of lineage, but I think it's on that level of like show wise. Like it's your main card show. It's your main card show. Your show's main title. It's the title that pretty much anyone who joins NXT that is male will go after. Probably even women eventually. We'll probably have a female wrestler that wins the NXT title. No matter how long she holds, it doesn't matter. I know they already have one, but I'm just saying, just we don't know what the future holds. So this is what I'm gonna say. I think what he's trying to say is simple. NXT is a little too indie for him. So much indie to the point where it feels like the run of the mill everyday indie show. It doesn't feel like a WWE show. It's different. It's good, but it's different to the point where it's a big of a what is this? Like, have you ever watched 205 Live? If you watched the early day of 205 Live, it wasn't taken too seriously. It was taken to a kind of, it's wrestling, it has story, and it was still trying to find a footing. I like 205 Live. I'm not gonna lie, funny enough, I like 205 Live. The reason I like the original NXT when Neville was champion. Reason being because Neville elevated it so much with that championship from NXT to 205 Live. He did the best he could with it, and he ran it. I kind of didn't care for too many other matches, and I didn't care for too many other wrestlers. It was a very few I could care for that was on 205 Live. For example, I love Neville. He was my favorite on 205 Live. My favorite. Second would be TJ Perkins. Why? Because I just loved him. The guy could go. Uh, Drew Gulak was also my favorite. Akira Tozawa was also really good to me. And I like Buddy Murphy. I definitely like Buddy Murphy better in 205 Live than main roster because main roster he kind of, it's like you have to realize that a lot of the styles that go into like 205 Live in NXT, they feel the same. They feel like indie wrestling throughout and through in, and then it's like, so you're able to see like Shinsuke Nakamura do hard hitting style, like his strong style, but you're not able to watch him do it when he goes to the main roster because he has to now fight differently, he has to wrestle differently. And I knew he was gonna have to do that from when he get there. The only way, because here's the thing, if you look at it from like this. Go watch New Japan Wrestling. If you tell me anyone from New Japan stepped into the WWE that they wouldn't run it until they fight someone that's just very determined to beat them like that. That would be the only way that I could think story-wise that they could lose. That'd be the only way. And then from that point on, if they make them like a WWE wrestler, because let's be real, WWE wrestlers, they're not supposed to be the big toughen up type guy, the take the hit and don't care, no sell, that's fine. They're not always doing that. It is you take a hit, you fall. You get slightly bumped, you fall. The stories sometimes are bad, but you're supposed to fall. You're not supposed to always no sell. You're not supposed to be this overarching giant. Yes, you can be a good superstar like Roman Reigns on SmackDown and Drew McIntyre on Raw. You can be these guys, but you cannot be like a Shinsuke Nakamura in New Japan that was so good to the point where, let's be real, everyone wanted him to come here. And now he's here, and he ran NXT for a little bit until coming over to SmackDown, which he had his time, but his time has gone down, and his style has gone down also. He's not able to be the hard-hitting person that he normally would be. The crowd isn't even the same for it. Well, the crowd probably still is the same, but I mean the audience that he's wrestling for now. I would say a lot of these wrestlers probably shouldn't go to the main roster for this in particular reason. I'm not saying that NXT is worse, I am just stating this. NXT is actually a good show, but you have to understand it is an indie at the end of the day. It is a indie show that WWE has over, that they have money over, that they have power over, that they created. That's basically what it is. It's supposed to be that mesh of styles before going to a main roster. I suggest like Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, never go there. If they do go, they would have to, and I mean it. Adam Cole, all of them, they would have to change their style to an unbelievable level, because it's one thing to have a one-off match. It's one thing to fight them at a pay-per-view, but it's something totally different when you have to change up your entire style to now more family friendly. Because let's be real, it's not family friendly over there. You can't tell me this. If it is family friendly, then slap me in the face and call me your uncle, because it's not. It's not by any stretch of the imagination. Is NXT just family friendly when it comes to? I feel like they're more on the edgy side of it. It's like Raw, but except just more edgy in a shorter time span. So that's probably what he meant to say, but I'm probably wrong. Bobby Leslie sucks. I like Bobby Leslie. That was all I'm saying.